Now I know related and that's where Mr. Perez got his start, was actually in affordable rentals. I know that and you guys have got a whole division now and are going strong at working at affordable housing. But I'd like to ask you guys, do you think this is an issue, and do you plan to try and do anything for affordable housing in the future?
I'll start with the last question, which is easiest, which right now I have no plans to do anything in affordable housing because it's a different marketplace and I don't know that as well as those that do from a private standpoint. However, I am involved in some of the municipal efforts towards affordable housing. And a couple of things you just said are a little bit misleading. First of all, affordable housing isn't reliant upon, although home ownership is part of it, rental is a big part of affordable housing. And at all levels, from the workforce housing to affordable housing, as qualified by HUD and other levels, we have enough housing in Broward County, enough housing stock to satisfy the population growth at those needs. The problem is at the next level of that index, which is when you calculate what people pay for housing and transportation, how much that starts to cost, because the affordable housing isn't necessarily accessible to public transportation and isn't necessarily downtown Fort Lauderdale or within walking distance of work, so people need cars and people need to drive. That change is happening greatly in Broward County for the first time. We're seeing between the localized projects like the Wave in Fort Lauderdale, All Aboard Florida coming more south, as well as some of the east-west projects that are coming in. You're going to find more opportunities for affordable housing throughout the county that actually fit the lifestyle and demographics where people are living now, and not forcing people to move out of their way to be able to find an affordable spot. So while I agree that we do need help and we do need to work on it, it's not nearly as alarmist as I think you just came across.
Scott, what do you think?
I actually think that the difficulty in obtaining mortgage financing has been creating great strength in the multifamily housing market. In the last week, I've read Multifamily Executive or Multifamily News ranking Fort Lauderdale in the top 10 markets for rental growth for 2015. A lack of mortgage financing or a lack of availability of good credit to be able to buy a home, particularly at a lower price point, is putting people into apartments. Great apartments are being built all over the county that is serving that demand. So I actually believe that we're continuing to serve that segment through the development of great urban multifamily housing properties.
Okay. Mike, you guys are doing a lot of affordable housing now. What's your take?
Well, I guess I have several thoughts on this. One, most of the government programs target the very low income, which is below 50%, or the low income, which is below 80%. There's really not too many programs out there that target that 80 to 150% of median. So that tends to be the market that's, in my mind, the most underserved. Granted, we could always choose more of the low end, more for the low and the very low. And the other problem that we face is that Broward County and Miami-Dade County are basically built out for the most part, so there's not a lot of green land. It's much cheaper to build in suburbia on green land than it is in these urban locations. The higher density you build, the more expensive your construction costs are. But that's the reality, and that's where we're at today. And actually, that's what we want to do, especially for the low income and the moderate low income, is to put them in places in close proximity to jobs. So we do want them in the urban area, but it does take more of a subsidy because, again, it's more expensive to build in the urban locations.
It's extremely difficult to put that debt stack together and still make a fair profit when you try to attempt to service the affordable housing segment.
Most of our deals are layered with many different layers of subsidies and sources of funding to make the deals work.
Kobe, I'm going to get to some audience questions in about 5 minutes, but I just have one more question for Kobe and for Carolyn. Did you approach your work for the Four Seasons in Fort Lauderdale any differently than you might have if it would have been in Miami?
Yes, we did. And again, it relates to the uniqueness of the destination. For example, the Four Seasons in Surfside has to do with the historic building and the 900 feet on the ocean, whereby in Fort Lauderdale, we had an opportunity, for example, that does not exist anywhere else in the Western world, which is the marina and the boat life that we have. We try to do some things like that in Dubai. But there's nothing compared to the marine life from a boat standpoint that exists, where really people have invested so much money and time in these beautiful vessels, which are beautifully designed and appointed and maintained, and how that relates, if you will, to that location destination had something to do with it from a design standpoint and from an imagery standpoint. And it goes back to the days of the Yankee Clipper, when Marilyn Monroe used to come and hang out there. And you look at the history and the black and white pictures, and that's really when you start to see again the depth of the opportunity in Broward County. For me, it's not just a destination between South Beach and the breakers. You know, for me, the opportunities west and east from a design and from an imagery and history in Broward County are immense.
Carolyn, last one's for you, and then I'm going to open it up for audience questions. What projects are the brokers that you work with on the Master Brokers Forum in Broward County? Which ones seem to be creating the most buzz, that people are the most excited about?
I'm not sure I can isolate that in this room and still perhaps do business with everybody else in this room.
Well, these are other people, what they're telling you.
That's a fair answer. There are a lot of projects. There are what's wonderful in our real estate world today, it's getting more competitive. And because of this, the new amenities, the branding awareness, it's creating a different reach. So I think buyers that are brokers, we're very fortunate at Master Brokers. We've had some wonderful events in very different environments. Our most recent event at Auberge was spectacular, directly on the sand. We're all very excited about the Four Seasons and the rebirth of Conrad in the ocean there, and Paramount, of course, was always the signature staple. Now it's just who's next on the block. So we're looking forward to, and we all talk about where we're bringing our buyers. We all talk about what their experience is. We talk about potential new introduction of resort residences, the rebirth of the condominium hotel concept. But really, we're also long awaiting downtown. There hasn't been a downtown project. So I think that there's been a lot of excitement for different reasons among our brokers.
Interesting. Okay, very good. Okay, we've got about 5 or 10 minutes left for audience questions. Anybody have a question for one of our panelists? Yes, sir.
Speaking of boating, do you see any of the potential buyers coming to the market requesting developments that have more of a dry dock or a connected marina? From a developer standpoint, is land simply too expensive to really take that much space to create something like that? And are you being asked to design things of that nature in Broward County? Because as parking in any urban area, that's going to start running out very quickly.
We are, and we're doing so. We've been doing so in Miami. For example, 400 Sunny Isles has a dry dock next to it. But specifically in Fort Lauderdale, the demand is greater. It's wider, it's more unique, and it goes from Dania Beach, if you will, to the Fort Lauderdale River, in that whole area. So you have a vast, great opportunity to create that. And it does not necessarily mean that the dock is by your apartment or by your condo, but it could be a couple of blocks down, but it's not far away. And so I see a lot of unique opportunities like that we're working on and designing right now.
Spanish design was very popular. Lately, it seems to be very contemporary, almost square boxes. What do you envision the next design, the next hot look?
That's a very deep question. And Nick is listening very closely, and I'm not going to tell you, no. But seriously, the opportunities to create contemporary designs are greater now than they have been in a long time. I'm by education and by birth, I'm a modernist. The traditional architecture, though, fetches a lot of money per square foot, whether you're in Palm Beach or you're on Fisher Island. High numbers. But also tradition with contemporary is kind of unique. You have these opportunities, again, which makes it very nice in the neighborhoods in Fort Lauderdale. You have the neighborhoods of the single-family residential, which have very nice architecture. You have historic buildings. And you take that river and you take other locations, which and even contemporary building like the Yankee Clipper, which were built in the 50s and 60s, and you try to work off of those and use we try to use those as a DNA and the inspiration for the buildings that we work with. We don't want to end up with just, we want to have a style that relates to the context of the neighborhood, the history of the community. And that's what can also help make buildings different. Look, buildings for me are like people. Inside, we're all the same. Hopefully, we all have the same mechanism and the same hearts and lungs, and hopefully we all have all the parts there, and they all fit very compact and very efficiently. But on the outside, we're all different, well, completely different. Even two kids, my two boys are day and night from each other, the same mother, same father, to the best of my knowledge, with the same DNA. But they're completely different. And buildings are like that, or at least the buildings that we strive to design. So even if we create a bunch of buildings together, we try to have them somewhat different. So all of a sudden you don't look up and you go, oh my God, they're all the same. They just repeated the same plan, right? So that's what we try to do.
You hit on what Carolyn said earlier about having for sale product. Thank you. To having for sale product in the urban core. I mean, in high-rise construction at 200 plus a foot, and land and profit and sales and marketing, you got to sell a high-rise condo for 400 plus a foot to lift a job. So how do you get, and that's a 1,200 square foot unit, it's $500,000. So how do we get affordable, not affordable, but like reasonably priced, taking the millennials out of their apartments and into for sale product when we kind of have this yin and yang with construction costs and development where you can't deliver a product that these millennial kids that want to stay and buy can afford?
I actually would love to take a stab at answering that question. So I think it's interesting. The millennials, while we spend all of this time, and I think even the tourist industry is spending so much time marketing to the millennials, and I don't believe that they're our buyer today. I think they may be buyers for potential condominium conversions that Related will do on some of their projects, hopefully. I think from a next level up, that you're building residences that are not 1,200 square feet. They're going to be slightly larger. Buyers will pay well more than $400 a foot for that level and to be in that location in this market. Urban, non-water. There hasn't been anything new. There has been no opportunity. You want to be downtown Los Angeles, you want to walk, everything that's even stretched west on Los Angeles, there hasn't been an opportunity to have a residence that's of decent size that you can move to. So I believe there is a depth of market that has not been explored.
If I can build on that a little bit, I agree greatly with what you said, but part of that is no one building can do that. We can't build a building in the middle of nowhere at that price, at least in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and be able to do it. But what's changing and the number of projects that are coming in and the scale of what's happening downtown, it's going to be attractive to more and more people. And you're right, the millennial straight out of college isn't going to come and buy the condominium, but that's never been who the homeowner is. There'll be the renters who, into the rental buildings that are built alongside that, but you're going to see that off the water isn't necessarily going to be a negative. And I'm the biggest believer in the pluses of being on the water, and Fort Lauderdale has always been developed along the water and the riverways, and that's one of the unique elements of the city, which is why the downtown core isn't as much as it is elsewhere. It's spread out. The property values and the wealth along the river is not coming out from a single core. You're going to see over the next several years that start to change near Los Olas and near Flagler Village. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with results.
Yeah, the lack of the first-time home buyer, there's no really good foundation for the first-time home buyer, even though rents are low. It's cheaper to own versus rent, and interest rates are low, and you still don't have a foundation for these first-time home buyers, so it's affecting the move-up market. Most recoveries usually always have first-time buyers out buying, and this recovery doesn't have it. And how do you think it might affect it going forward?
Well, that hasn't been what's driven the marketplace. That certainly is part of the sales we've seen. It might not be a 22-year-old buying their first home, it might be a 30-year-old, but we're definitely seeing first-time home buyers in the marketplace. I'm seeing it at my project, and anecdotally I'm seeing it across the board. It might not be with the beachfront multi-million-dollar condominium, but across the board there are opportunities for that, and we are seeing first-time home buyers take advantage of it, and I suspect Scott's got more insight on this than I do.
Well, we build apartments nationally, and the millennials are certainly one of the most sought-after demographics for rental housing. Renters actually, millennials that can afford to purchase, even knowing that it's more expensive to rent than purchase, are still opting to rent in lieu of purchasing. There's been really a significant demographical mindset and change over the last several years. We've seen a rapid decline in U.S. home ownership rates from peaking up to about 69%, dropping down to projected lows around as much as 61%. At the same time, we've seen a lot of new household formations. We see a completely different mentality. People aren't looking to get a job and build a career with one company for a long time. You have so much that's driven by technology these days, and young entrepreneurs made up of the creative and the millennial classes that really have one foot out the door with a perception that they're going to be the next founder of Facebook. So the idea of having flexibility, mobility, connectivity to be within great urban areas and environments is keeping a very robust multifamily housing market. And I don't really think that we need to be looking nationally to try and fill any void, because even if the demand were there, the mortgage financing isn't there. And I don't think that I believe we're probably several years away from seeing that change for a domestic purchaser.
Interesting comment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending the Broward Development Program.